This is a topic I've covered a little bit in the past, but when using artillery and in general missile units in Total War Warhammer, creating proper spacing so that your units have open firing lanes, especially for direct line of sight fire units, is very important. Even for non-direct line of sight fire units though, today I've got a couple of Empire replays to give you some examples of using space. Today we're going to start with myself as the Skaven against Rider of Rohan's Empire. He's got Boris leading the way, Bright Wizard, a whole bunch of swordsmen, spearmen, crossbowmen, very cost-effective choice, some halberdiers, a couple of Knights of the Blazing Sun, and Hammer of Witches, of course. And already, one of the main things I'm going to talk about today is playing forward. And again, this is a topic I've covered a little bit in the past, but I did want to revisit it and kind of talk about some additional things in general in terms of positioning and spacing. So Rider of Rohan's already doing something very smart, which is playing up from his artillery, right? That way, you know, he still has these halberdiers here to protect. You notice the Knights of the Blazing Sun are also in a position that if I were to, say, have some hounds hidden somewhere in these forests here, which I do not, but he doesn't know that for the time being, you know, the Knights of the Blazing Sun can sweep in and also protect. You know, this is a little bit different. This will apply to most factions, except kind of the dwarfs because of your lack of mobile units. You do have to play a little bit closer to your artillery, but in general, for most factions, playing up like this is a pretty good idea, because what it means is if I have some kind of breakthrough or I win some pocket of engagement, I then have to spend the time to move my units across this space. All that time can be fired at. Rider of Rohan has time to respond with his own forces, so it just gives you more time to operate from the end of artillery. Anyway, for my build, I've got Ikit, of course. I decided to go with an Eshin Sorcerer here, have some fun. No summons for me, though, which is going to be potentially an issue. Jezzail's, couple of Globadiers here, a couple of Eshin Triads. Pit Fighters of Hell's Deep, one Warp Grinder, Assassin, whole bunch of chaff, including a couple of Clan Rat Spears. And already the crossbowmen are opening up on my Poisonwind Globadiers, which is a great initial target, even though, you know, the Globadiers actually aren't that much more expensive individually than the crossbowmen. They do have 100 armor. That decent AP of the crossbowmen and just the no missile block chance here is going to hurt quite a bit. And the other thing, too, with these crossbowmen is they are somewhat spaced out. I am going to be able to push through with this Doom Wheel, the Wheels of Doom, in addition to Ikit. I've brought this, so we're going double special Doom Wheel here. Will it end up working? We'll see. Flamestorm in the back as I lock down with Howling Warp Gale, Bright Wizard. We're going to hit it with Warp Stars. We're going to hit it with, you know, Ikit's little magic missile thing, the Jezzail's as well, and the caster is gone. Not before getting off a pretty good Flamestorm, though. Does manage to catch these Poisonwind Globes and the Jezzail's here, Natty Bubo Sharpshooters. The cannons also shooting the Sharpshooters, which from a target priority standpoint, also very good play by Rider of Rohan. They are the main threat for me to get at his artillery, right? Since at this point he pretty much knows I don't have any mobile units, no wolf rats or anything like that. So in the meanwhile, once the cavalry collapse here, I'm a little bit late with my Triads and Warp Grinders. Cannons immediately switch on to Ikit Claw. So I just want to say, you know, to my patron, Rider of Rohan, who's been taking lessons from me for a while in this Patreon kind of practice scheme. And great targeting priority, great timing on the switches too, you know, making sure you're not friendly firing those Knights of the Blazing Sun. Definitely something I would probably do. So anyway, I did make a little bit of a breakthrough here, and this is what I'm talking about in terms of spacing, because now, like, I have to extend this Doom Wheel all the way out here, potentially with the Skaven Slaves and Assassin as support, but at the same time, I'm also trying to chase, like, a bunch of units off the battlefield here, and also I'm very close to the Hammer of Witches, and again, great target priority switch from Rider Rohan to immediately change to the eminently threatening Wheels of Doom. I am actually going to eventually land home, zap some of the crew right there. But of course, there's Halberdiers on station to protect against this, and the cannons are actually kind of going to block the Doom Wheel a little bit so I don't get that great of an engagement. Although direct side blasting into both of the cannons, I might be able to, actually blow up some of the cannon models. But instead, I'm going to pull away. Knights of the Blazing Sun came back from route there as well, so just a bad situation for me overall. In the meanwhile, Ikit ended up getting routed off. The damage that he had taken led to him losing out to Boris, despite some, kind of debuffs and other support there. So that's really not good for me at all. Poison Wind Globes in another kind of pocket, trying to make a stand here. And we've got the Assassin rallying up with some Triads. Again, going to try and form up a little bit of a pocket here to have this last Doom Wheel do something. But Boris comes down once again. Actually failed to take out the Hammer of Witches. Its crew gets back online. So pretty much this is a GG for me. Just going to try and make it, as close as I can. The Assassin's going to run in here alongside the Triads. Triads fighting Halberdiers. Maybe not the best. Also just get terrified away by Boris immediately, although we were doing pretty good damage to him. Obviously, Boris with that 8 heals per second regeneration. Very hard to take down if you don't have enough burst damage. Eshin Sorcerer finally getting caught up here. The Knights Blazing Sun that chased Ikit off do get caught by some Triads here, and we're able to drag them down. Finally generate a little bit of value. But, yeah, it's pretty hopeless at this point. We'll fast forward through the rest as Boris, he routs the Assassin, and then everything else just keeps him routed, and eventually hit army losses there. So, great job to Rider Rohan. Excellent kind of textbook spacing. Good targeting priority as well, which is not exactly the topic of today's video, but that's like a very clear textbook demonstration of why playing forward from your artillery and creating that space can lead to great benefits. Like if that Hammer of Witches had been closer, like if he had just kept his army back, like granted I have to advance further to engage, but even still, like I can be dodging my Doom Wheels as I'm advancing. My micro's not as taxed as it is during the actual engagement where I'm having to, reissue attack orders, make sure units are doing what they're supposed to. Yeah, so that decision to play forward from the artillery definitely went into his benefit. For my side, Ikit was very well limited, and that's largely due to the cannon. Same thing, the Jezzails do actually pay for themselves. Part of that sniping the caster, but also being very limited by the Hammer of Witches. The Regiment Renowned Doom Wheel just about pays for itself. As parts of my army did pretty well, I would say. Like one of the Globadiers, again, one did not though. Credit to the crossbowmen here, very cost effective. Don't quite pay for themselves, but again, against Skaven, they might not necessarily just because of leadership. The Hammer of Witches though, 2,398 damage value, absolutely awesome. So yeah, you'd love to see that, at least if you're an Empire player, which I am. Yeah, it was kind of funny. We were in voice chat during this practice session. I was joking with Rider Rohan like, oh, you have stuff to deal with Doom Wheels? And he said, I don't know, actually. But it turns out, yeah, just the cannon, well defended, well spaced, and great targeting priority as well. Was enough to deal with it. So we're going to take a look at another example of mine from another patron practice session, Empire against Wood Elves. So let's get to that. This time against the Wood Elves, I've brought rockets instead of cannons. Now, rockets and other kind of non-direct line of fire artillery you can use in a somewhat different way. Like here you can see a cannon would probably have a slope to shoot most of the Wood Elf army, maybe not these units over on the far right here. But Red Wedding Planner, another recently joined patron of mine. I believe this is our first practice session, and if you actually look, this one was before his performance on my recent King of the Hill, and according to him, in his words, he had a little bit of a run of success on said King of the Hill. He said this practice session specifically did help him out quite a bit, so just in his words, not mine. A little bit of a shameless plug for the Patreon practice sessions. Anyway, so with the artillery here on this map in particular, like I don't have quite as good of a line of fire as a mortar to say shoot up and over this forest. So I've deployed on the far left here where I have some open space to try and shoot through this alley. And then I'm actually just going to slide my army left and try and block this space directly between the artillery and my opponent's army here. At the same time, you know, playing forward from the artillery, I've got some assets to try and protect, but playing pretty aggressively with these pistoliers and trying to draw out his cavalry. He doesn't have a lot of mobile units in this army. There's really just these 2 glade riders, so if I can somehow get them in an aggressive situation with, you know, these crossbowmen here and the pistoliers in tandem, maybe bring these spears in as well, we can definitely get a good engagement, try and take out these spears relatively quickly. And again, just keeping the Hellstorm rocket battery far back, and then from Red Wedding Planner's perspective, one thing I told him is, you know, when he sees that I'm sliding my army over like this, he could choose to square up, or he could like swing almost wider and try and advance up through this forest as much as possible. Like, he's not going to be able to fit his whole army in here, and he will end up pushing up his left flank pretty much through this forest where it has some protection from the rocket battery. But maybe even pushing up like through the center, especially these war dancers, will protect not only from the rockets but also the crossbows. We're going to get a little bit of a weird melee engagement here as the armies kind of meet due to the fact that I was sliding over and things get a little bit out of position. I've also got some demis here with warrior priests, demigryph knights in the forest. They're going to pull back, and I'm just setting these spearmen with shields on this edge, essentially conceding this flank, more or less, just saying, okay, I'm going to overload on this side. We bring the Empire Knights up. Again, I see that this is the only cavalry he has, really. I mean, I guess Lost Sylvan Knights I did forget about over there. They're going to be brought to bear in just a moment here. Pistolier is getting a really nice engagement on those Blade Riders with spears. They miss their attack order and very quickly get shredded here. We've got the Spearmen to support as well. So again, pretty good stuff. He does start to break through up on this side, left a little bit of a gap there between those spears, and these War Dancers just come in. They're going to absolutely blend my poor crossbowmen. Really nice penumbral pendulum there as well. And yeah, I'm pulled back these demis again, just kind of setting this edge, conceding this space, because he's going to have to walk a long way to try and get to my rockets if he comes all the way around this way. So that's fine with me, as long as I'm kind of winning out on this left side here. I've broken through with the Pistoliers and the Empire Knights. I can start to come in and clean up his archers in the back line. So both of us kind of turning each other's flank here somewhat. But the rockets, even if they don't generate that much value, just the pressure, psychological or otherwise, you know, is very threatening and is going to lead to him trying to allocate a lot of resources to get back there, rather than trying to come in and protect these archers here. Like the Sylvan Knights, you can see they're going back. They're also going to target my demis, which, granted, pretty good high-value target, but there's an argument that they could have just swung through the forest right here and tried to protect against the Empire Knights. This is a nice charge, though. Good bloody engagement. The Demigryph Knights actually trade surprisingly well, all things considered. They have a little bit of fire damage. Not that that really helps here at all, but you do see that eventually they do get straight up shredded. Even with the Soul Fire Bombardment, which does a solid amount of damage, they just straight up get destroyed. It's still probably a cost-effective trade for me. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to actually math it out, but right now things are looking pretty good for me, but there are some threats. Finally, these Lorx-Rixers rally. They're going to come back and probably shut down the rockets at this point. But how much value have I got from them in the meantime? Yeah, they paid for themselves, so that's fine. Get the net on the Lost Sylvan Knights. They're going to get last few spiteful volleys off. Maybe some friendly fire on those spearmen, but that's fine. And then we're just moving in to try and clean up some of these last few War Dancers that have still racked up an extreme amount of value. War Dancers can be very good in this matchup. Yeah, lots of kills, I should say. Not the most value in the world, but very impressive kill totals. But Draika, leading the Wood Elf army, is a little bit vulnerable in that the Warrior Priest Banner of Eternal Flame means that, you know, whatever units are in the area of effect of him and he himself all do fire damage. So, like, these demis now rallied, although they're very weakened with their armor-piercing fire damage, you know, his fire damage as well. They'll be able to do some pretty good work against Draika, and you can see her taking those big hits already. Kindle Flame as well from me, just to give that extra little bit of fire weakness to try and finish things off. But yeah, in this case, I mean, again, the spacing, kind of the way the artillery was deployed, and then also how I move my army to sort of block the direct path and create more or less a situation where a Red Wedding Planner is forced to go the long way around, and also moving to counter the threats, right? You think about those wind conditions. In many cases, if the artillery is a wind condition, then kind of a secondary wind condition in that would be to... Oh, nice friendly fire from Marcus, would be to take out all the threats to that artillery, right? So, in this case, aggressively using the Pistoliers and the Empire Knights to try and take out the Glade Riders, which we were able to do pretty effectively. Even though the Pistoliers didn't quite pay for themselves at the end of the day, still very effective. Demigryph Knights, again, trade pretty cost-effective at the end of the day. Empire Knights also cleaning up archers in the back line was pretty good. As shown, the rockets do actually get this extra 130 value from what we saw before, almost 140. Good value on the Bright Wizard as well. State troops all trading pretty cost-effective here for Red Wedding Planner. Dryka, not quite what you'd want to see in terms of damage. I mean, of course, summons as well. I didn't see the Malevolent Dryads. Wasn't really paying attention. I think they got in the back line along with the War Dancers. So again, nice kill totals, at least on the one. The other two, I think, got hit a little bit hard by crossbow fire. This Loix Tricksters eventually came in and cleaned up the artillery to get a little bit of value back. But, yeah, a little bit of a experimental build. Again, if these patron practice sessions are mostly for practice and also kind of trying out new things, different builds. Red Wedding Planner, this has been some time from this session. I don't remember 100% what I told you in terms of build, but War Dancers, they can be pretty decent in this matchup. They're pretty squishy, though. I would generally say you could probably cut the two, and then, I don't know. There's different schools of thought in this matchup, but Waste Stalkers are a great option for countering artillery for Wood Elves, because they have the Arrows of Kurnos that can be used at extreme range to essentially blow up an artillery piece, right? Like Arrows of Kurnos, if it hits an actual artillery piece itself, it will detonate it, pretty much guaranteed. So, like, 2 Waste Stalkers could be a good way to go here. If you cut the 2 War Dancers, I think we can look at the cost maybe another time, but I think you would have enough for literally 2 Waste Stalkers with Arrows of Kurnos. Maybe you'd have to cut the Loix Tricksters as well and just bring some more width, more cheaper units, but anyway. That's that. I do have actually one more to get to today sent in from a viewer, so let's get to that. I think the real protagonist of today is probably the Fire Wizard, considering he's also been in every single replay on the Empire side. This one from F&G here, yeah, he's got a gun line build up against the Lizards, which is pretty strong. Lizards going in with a wide rush with some cavalry options here. Love the Lizard cavalry against the Empire. He's got Cold One Riders, also Cold One Spear Riders, another Cold One Rider, another Cold One Spear Rider. Yeah, Saurus Old Blood on the Carnosaur. Bunch of Skink cohort, Saurus, a couple Chameleon Skinks. Pretty straightforward build. F&G here going with 2 Great Cannons. He's got 4 Handgunners? No, 2 Handgunners, 2 Free Company Militia. A couple of Halberdiers as well, front line of Spears, 1 Greatsword, and the Sigmar's Sons. Volkmar the Grim leading the way up front, getting pretty aggressive already. So looking good so far. Again, beautiful spacing here, not only for the cannons to be spaced out, but the handgunners and the Free Company. This is almost more of a Dwarven style play, where you have just multiple layers creating that spacing. But the effect is more or less the same as the Lizards start to rush in here. Nice Burning Head to kind of disrupt their advance. Good focus fire on the Saurus Old Blood as well, as he kind of comes up front and center. Yeah, he's going to swing over on this flank and try and get some support. Halberdiers immediately rushing to respond. I like the placement of the Free Company out on the flanks as well, because they have the same unit card. Some people might be mistaken and think that they're also handgunners. They have more unit models and better stats, so they can actually, like, eat this charge a little bit better and wait for the Halberdiers to come help, which is exactly what's happening. Meanwhile, again, great targeting here from F&G, as we saw with the Rider of Rohan, focusing on the Saurus Old Blood with the handgunners as well. So that's good effective play there. Volkmar swinging in on the side, should be able to terrify those skinks away relatively quickly. And a nice engagement for the Saurus here, or bad engagement with the Saurus rather. Great for the Great Swords. Great for the Great Swords. Anyway, not so great for the Sigmar's Sons though. And some of the Lizard Cavalry eventually do get through on the actual handgunners, which is great. The cannons, though, are still left online. There's just a great saturation of threats here. And given that Empire didn't really bring much cavalry, the Lizard cavalry ends up being, you know, more of a liability. I mean, granted, still try and get through and get on all these ranged units, but there's potentially other options. Looks like this cannon is going to get collapsed, but the Halberdiers can maybe save the crew. Nice drop and scoot, though, from F&G. Actually drops with the crew manually the Great Cannon and pulls back through the Halberds. That's a really nice little micro play right there. Halberdiers also maneuvering again, just to kind of take up a protection position in case these Cold One Spear Riders, which it looks like they are going to, just move back on that Great Cannon. And the Halberdiers, again, moving in. Another drop and scoot from the Great Cannon. So really nice micro with F&G on his artillery to try and keep it protected there with those Halberdiers. The crew does still take some damage, but, you know, when they're dismounted from the guns, it's also less likely that the guns themselves will take damage. And those Saurus Warriors kind of bunched up on literally the last couple Sigmar's Sons. As soon as they go down, the Warrior Priest unleashes... Not the Warrior Priest. The Bright Wizard unleashes some flame. No Warrior Priest here, unfortunately. But, yeah, Great Swords do end up winning out there. Another Hammer of Sigmar means these Halberdiers will also probably win out. Of course, Volkmar definitely helps as well. What are you doing? Oh, are you shooting? I was like, this is a Fire Wizard literally trying to shoot Volkmar? No, Saurus Old Blood's still alive down in the low ground, but things are already not looking great for the Lizardmen. Cannons, the one ends up getting killed at the end of the day. The Halberdiers are not in a position to protect, and this one here might get taken out by the Skink Priest, but this Saurus definitely not so much of a threat. It's getting surrounded now by multiple resources, and the Skink, we'll see. But the Handgunners and Free Company also coming back here with the Halberdiers, and you see how spread out the Lizardman army is. Generally, this favors the Empire, although the Lizardman does have the cavalry advantage here. Kind of the infantry, Saurus are, what, 31 speed? Oh, they're actually 31 speed, which is okay. I think Empire... Halberdiers are only 30. Really? For some reason I was thinking state troops were faster than Saurus. I guess we all learned something new today. Yeah, I guess there's really not much of a speed difference in that case then. Especially given the poison, which there's not too much poison, only tasteful 2 chameleon skinks here, which have so far stayed alive the whole time. Not like they've been doing a whole lot of high-value work, but things are looking pretty grim for the Lizardmen at this point. Saurus Old Blood got finished off there, and it does look like army losses are going to take hold, so... Nice quick one from F&G. A few quick Empire replays, just well-defended artillery positions for the most part, winning the day, which is kind of classic Empire, right? 1250 on those cannons. The other one didn't quite pay for itself, but close enough. The Halberdiers that protected them also got some pretty good value as well, fending off those Lizard Cav. Handgunners likewise did some pretty decent work. Okay on the Free Company. They're kind of here to eat charges, potentially fight skinks in melee as well, so... good stuff. Volkmar and the Bright Wizard not actually getting that much value, but yeah, a lot of the value just coming in on the ranged units, which is kind of wide infantry / ranged. It seems to be more the meta these days with the Empire now that cavalry is not where it used to be. Like, pretty much Empire Knights, you can still use demis occasionally as well in certain situations, but more so like the builds of past years where I... personally love to use, where you take like 6 to 8 heavy cavalry units. Doesn't seem like those are super viable anymore, even in general. I don't know, I need to do some more playing around and testing, but this wide kind of infantry skirmish, like combined arms army, is definitely fun, don't get me wrong, but as a heavy cavalry enjoyer, I would love to see them make a little bit of a comeback. But anyway, that's kind of a topic for a different day. Hopefully you guys learned something from these examples. Kind of a longer video today, but I figured you guys deserved a triple cast because y'all have been so good and nice and wonderful. So thank you so much. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Be sure to subscribe if you haven't. Like the video, share it with friends. Thank you once again. See you next time.